Participants, kindly switch off your cameras.
Indra, shall we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Ma'am, can I start?
Yeah, yes. What did you say?
Ma'am, we are inaugurating with Tamil Thai Valtu.
I don't know, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Okay. Indra sir will be joining within a minute. Let him come. Hey. Indra, wait.
Gayatri,
Yes.
Just wait.
kindly stop, ma.
You want me to wait, ma'am?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah,
Okay,
sir
ma'am.
is joining us.
Let Jabra sir join.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
He is trying to download and join.
Madam, I'm
Thank you,
back
sir.
to.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sir,
Okay.
Okay, sir. We'll start, sir.
Yes, yes. Start பண்ணுங்க madam.
Thank you, sir.
we'll inaugurate this national level EFDP with Tamil Thai Valtu. Gayatri? Now, I call Dr. D.B. Jabra sir, our beloved Joint Registrar A&S, to share few words on this national E-level FTP.
Good morning to all. I'm very happy to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, madam. Yes. First, I would like to welcome Dr. T. Devasi Hamani, Associate Professor of English and
Lal,
University.
Dr. Lal. Lal,
Madam?
Dr. Lal.
Or first morning session, Dr.
Morning
Lal.
session, Dr. Lal.
Yes, madam. Thank you, madam. Welcome, Dr. Lal, sir.
Hi.
Hi, sir. Professor of English, University of Kerala. Really, we are happy to receive your word, sir, this morning. Everybody is seeking your good experience. And this program is national program. Definitely, all the faculty members will be benefited during this crucial period. Once again, welcome our Dr. Sandrashana Madam, HOD of English, and other faculty members I'm really am appreciating Dr. Sandrashana madam and her team, because first time she is conducting this FTP program during this crucial period through webinar. I'm appreciating. I think lot of people are attending, more than around 200 people are attending. So everybody will be benefited. On behalf of Dr. N.Ch.R. Education Research Institute, we once again welcome you all. Thank you, Professor and others. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now I call
Thank you, sir.
our head of the department, Dr. Chandrasena Rajeshwaran ma'am, to give a welcome address.
A very good morning to one and all present here. I thank our founder chairman, the visionary par excellence, Dr. A.C. Shanmugam, our honorable president, engineer A.C.S. Arun Kumar, our beloved provost, Dr. G. Gopalakrishnan, our vice chancellor, Dr. Geeta Lakshmi, our registrar, Dr. C.B. Palnivelu, joint registrar academics, Dr. Cyril Raj, our beloved joint registrar, Dr. Jabaraj, and our dean, Dr. Shubhashri ma'am, at the outset. We are honored to be here in this august platform to discuss various methods by which we can improve our knowledge. Okay, so I am really happy that we are here to improvise our knowledge, to take back certain information that our resource person, Dr. C.L.R. has been will be giving us. Okay. Before that, I would like to say a few words regarding our present context. We are in a context wherein our UGC has prescribed certain norms for teaching our students. Our teaching learning process is defined in terms of LOCF, that is a learner based outcome, learner based out LOCF, learner LOCF that VGC has given is really demanding. We have spoken and heard enough of COVID-19, and the monster may be overpowered in a few months. That is what we hope for. Till then, let us keep safe within our four walls of our house and listen to learned resource persons to improvise our teaching techniques in the post-COVID times. Okay. Teaching is a bit complex considering the jargons like a teacher is no more a teacher but a facilitator, monitor, coordinator, and so on. To make classroom learning an engaging and enjoyable activity. That is what we are expected to do. And the communication skills of our students should be taken care that they are able to speak and write clearly in standard academic English. Ability that they should be able to listen, to read carefully various viewpoints and engage with them. Okay, and they are also asked to have the digital literacy. Digital literacy itself is not enough. They need to have the competence, digital competence, the ability to use digital resources for gathering information, ability to use digital resources for presentations and various other purposes. Okay? So this is what the expectation is. Learners should be in such a context. How are you going to teach the students? They should be engaged in rigorous process of learning, and they should be self discover, and they should be asked to adapt highly focused approach to learning. They should be encouraged to focus on key areas of the course and spend time on learning the course fundamentals and their application in real life and society. This is what we talk about the cognition process, or they should be able to have declarative knowledge as well as be able to process the knowledge for future application. In teaching and learning pedagogy, they should not be trained in a conclusion based approach, but with an approach to experiential process based approach. The faculty should be promoting learning on a proportionate scale. That is what they have given. The guidelines is only 20% tutorials, 30% visual, and 50% they should learn to do by practice. This is what they expect. This is a kind of learner-centered teaching that they insist on. The ratio should is maybe it may subject to change to the university's adaptation of the program. But however, the knowledge that the learners are going to receive from the teachers is that they should be able to use their knowledge, what they have gathered inside the college, actually to use it outside the college, outside the university, in the real life, for so many other purposes. So for that, the language that learning should equip them in such other ways, in so many other ways, like instructional conversations, discussions, and role plays. And this is what they insist upon to improve the communicative skills of the learners, as well as to bring teamwork and team spirit in them. So we are here to learn from Dr. C.A. Lal how exactly we are going to reappraise our teaching techniques in the ESL classes. ESL classes, we know how the students are, they are less motivated to learn, but how are we going to motivate them for an effective learning? That is what we are going to learn from Dr. Lal today. So thank you, sir, for coming to our screen to give us your valid input for our teachers all over the country. And I request now Dr. Harshini ma'am to introduce our resource person, Dr. C.A. Lal.
Thank you, ma'am. A pleasant good morning to one and all connected here. It is a privilege for me to introduce the resource person of today, an erudite scholar, an experienced teacher, an enthusiastic learner, Dr. Lal C.A., Professor of English, School of Distance Education, University of Kerala. Dr. Lal completed his UG, PG, and also his doctorate from the University of Kerala. He has also completed ADDOP Online from the University of Oregon and Tech Online from the University of Maryland, USA. He has also cleared the UGC NET in the year 1990. His rich teaching experience from 1993 to present has been formerly in Christian College, Katakada, and presently in School of Distance Education, University of Kerala. Dr. Lal has been a master trainer for English language skills in the Additional Skills Acquisition Program, Government of Kerala, from 2012 to 2016. He has considerable experience in training aspirants for IELTS and is also a business English certificate trainer. Dr. Lal has been course coordinator for BA and MA English and also for a number of certificate, diploma, and advanced diploma courses. His former responsibilities include being member of curriculum committee, being member public relations officer and public information officer, University of Kerala, and being NSS program officer, NAC coordinator, IQAC coordinator, and so on. His current responsibilities include being chapter head and special invitee, executive committee of LTI, member for English Board of Studies, master trainer in the Access Micro Scholarship Program of the Regional English Language Office, New Delhi, and liaising the exchange program of the Canterbury Christchurch, Kent, UK, with various centres of higher education in Kerala. Dr. Lal has paid numerous academic visits abroad and holds membership in various editorial boards and has also organized a number of seminars and workshops. He has been bestowed with Salute the Silent Worker Award in 2015 and Eltai Hornby Trust Award for use of ICT in education. He has edited and also written quite a number of English course books and has presented and published many papers in national and international conferences and journals. He is a PhD guide to a number of scholars and has been a resource person for many workshops, seminars, and conferences at regional, national, and international levels. It is a blessing that you are here with us today, sir. We are really inspired and hope to learn a lot from you that would help us go places in our career. May the Lord Almighty bless you with more and more laurels in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chandrashena madam. Chandrashena madam. ஹர்ஷினி மேடம் நீங்க சொல்லுங்க சார் இன்ட்ரோடியூஸ் பண்ணி பேச ஆரம்பிக்கிட்டோம். Chandrashena madam.
Now, yes, sir. Now, Dr. Lal, Harshini ma'am has introduced.
முடிஞ்சாச்சு.
Okay, sir. Sir, we are privileged to have Dr. Lal in our midst. Sir, I have asked Dr. Lal to take the mic.
Yes, thank you. Before I start the presentation and turn on the present now button, I have a request to the participants. Please turn off your video and your mic, and better not touch the mouse at all until the questions time comes. You'll be tempted to click something and that might cause problem. So my advice is turn off your video so that bandwidth will be more available for the audio. Thank you. And also not to do anything else on the screen while the talk is going on so that we won't have disturbances. Thank you very much for that. So let me try to turn on my screen for you. Is my screen visible to you? I hope it is.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, it is the PowerPoint screen. Well, right. Okay, the topic we have is well, let me first of all thank Dr. Chandrasena and registrar and all the authorities of the MGR University for inviting me for this talk today. And I am no stranger to MGR University. I've been to the university a couple of times. Once to take part in my conference and another time to do a PhD writing. So this is like coming back to university again during this times of lockdown. So and I understand that this is a session in which the teachers are preparing for the next semester, whenever that is going to happen. And I have planned my talk accordingly. Well, it would be nice if we could interact, but given the limitation of the present medium, we can't do that. But I'll assume that you will do a bit of interaction at least and some parts. Let us go ahead with that. The topic we have, and I have planned this, reappraising teaching techniques for ESL classes. So we are all teachers and we have been teaching for quite a number of years. So there is no particular point in teaching new things. There aren't many new things for us to learn either because we are experienced. So I'll do a kind of reappraisal of certain aspects of English for second language teaching from a very practical context. So as a new year or a new semester begins, we think of our classes again. Not that we don't think of our classes otherwise. So first, I thought I'll start talking with the notion of lesson planning. When people do training programs, and in some colleges, the authorities insist on having written lesson plans, which is all good. I have no particular things to say about that. But I would go a step beyond that and think of lesson planning as a part of our essential preparation for teaching. So some, however you plan, however good a teacher you are, and however excellent our students are, and however wonderful our facilities, there can be very good days and there can be very bad days. I do not mean rainy days or very hot days. I mean, you plan very well and you go to a class and you find that none of your tricks work on that particular day. And some days you don't plan that much and you are you are rather off your mood and all that, but still you find that your class has worked exceptionally well. This is an experience that every teacher has gone through. So that shows that we are different from other people working in the other fields. In another area, if you plan well, you know exactly how your trajectory is going to be, how exactly the things will go. But in a classroom, that's not the case, particularly because we are working with living, very dynamic human beings, and there is a different kind of combination in each class, and the dynamics of the class will vary according to that, many umpteen different aspects. So we can never really anticipate how our class is going to be, particularly in this context of autonomy. Maybe 30 years or 40 years back, it was okay. If you plan a lecture well, you go deliver your lecture and come back, it's fine. It's not the teacher's worry whether the students understood or they were listening, etc. We kind of had the teacher-centered model of classes then. But now, the last 1 decade, 2 decades, we have gone a long way to giving our learners autonomy. Largely, they have become autonomous now, but still we have quite a long way to go. So particularly with autonomous learners, with their needs and their priorities given a lot of importance, our class can never be anticipated. So planning a lesson, planning a class, by lesson I mean a session that you do 1 hour or 45 minutes. So planning a lesson will certainly increase the chances of it being a successful one, a general statement. And I quote Jim Scrivener, who is a writer I respect quite a lot. Here is a book by Scrivener that you might find useful. It's called Learning Teaching, Essential Guide to English Language Teaching. That is Jim Scrivener. Well, he is a wonderful teacher himself. I've had the privilege.
Prabha Naveen sir, excuse me sir. Prabha Naveen sir, can you stop presenting? Yes sir, yes sir. You can go ahead, sir.
Can I go on?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Yeah, thank you. So
but you have to present the screen again, sir, because
oh, it has gone. Sorry.
Yes sir.
Let me see.
That's because of the participant presenting, sir. No problem.
Yeah, I once again request the participants, don't touch the screen, please. Don't touch your mouse.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I was about to quote Jim Scrivener. Scrivener says, planning is also a thinking skill, which made me think a lot. We always think of planning as something that we write down very tediously because somebody asked us to do that. But for a teacher on whom a formal lesson plan is not a compulsion, even planning becomes a thinking skill. It's part of our thinking process. When we plan our class, that is, when we think of our class, we start planning, and planning is part of the thinking process. Well, but the written plan, if you have, it shows that you have been thinking, and that's not always needed for a teacher. For an experienced teacher, or even an inexperienced teacher, that it is possible to have the plan in your head. You don't have to write it down in great detail. But it is good to have practice and writing lesson plans, and also in revising it, because that will update you in terms of the requirements of the learners and things like that. So having the plan in your head is very important. So this is by way of opening the conversation. Now I have for you a little paragraph which I'd like you to read quickly. It has a couple of statements that are not true. So I'd like you to keep in your mind which are not true. Here I am imagining you to be students. This is a task perhaps I would give to my students when I begin a class with a particular item in mind. So here, for example, I have a grammatical item in mind, and I am trying to present it to the class. So I request your attention to this slide where I have written a paragraph in which there are a couple of things that are not true. I'm lying there. Please read. Take 30 seconds for that. So this is my account about lockdown. So I've said that lockdown days are indeed special. I find these days just great and have attended a few parties. The police force is very vigilant and would not allow people to go out unnecessarily. The tigers in the city zoo have been roaming free to ensure peace. Most people remain indoors, reading books or fighting with family as usual. I shave every day and have even dyed my beard. So that is a paragraph with both facts and fibs in it. So this is something I have for you. And in the second stage, I have highlighted the sentences which are not true. I'm sure you guessed because it's very evident. I find these days just great and have attended a few parties. It's not possible. The tigers in the cities who have been roaming free to ensure peace. Well, you know, I shave every day and have even dyed my beard. You look at my face and you know it's a lie. So these are three statements in the sentence which are not true, but it is it is contextual for us because it's related to the teacher who is talking. It is contextual to us because it is about a condition that all of us are going through. So in the third stage, I draw your attention just to three parts of the whole unit: have attended, have been roaming, and have even died. So I have zeroed in on three grammatical items which involve the present perfect form. Well, now let's go to the next slide, which is about how do students learn a new item. The new item I am trying to teach here is present perfect forms. Well, I'm not going to teach in detail at all. I'm just drawing your attention to a few aspects of teaching. So in our everyday class, don't read it. I don't want you to be distracted by the stuff on the PowerPoint. Just listen to me now. We as teachers, we teach literature. Many of us teach literature, but we have a big responsibility of teaching language to our learners, particularly learners in their beginning stage, the initial stage. Maybe throughout the undergrad period, they can be considered to be in the early part, and then slowly they will move to the higher levels of language learning. So we assume that we present in the class an item. It can be a grammar item. It can be a pronunciation item. It can be a vocabulary item. Here I have taken a grammar item, which we saw, which was the present perfect forms. But I am not telling you that it is a present perfect. I just shared that with you because we are teachers, and I wanted you to know that. But in the class, I wouldn't mention these are present perfect tenses until much later, if at all I would do that. Well, there are a few stages through which a learner learns a new item, or rather the teacher teaches a new item in the class. The first stage is ignorance or near ignorance. Forgive that expression, it sounds rather negative, but it just means that student is not aware of a particular item. It's not that he is living in darkness, in great ignorance. He is ignorant about a particular aspect, and it is that aspect that I am trying to focus on. So the progression is from that to 6, which we'll read one by one. Read along with me. Don't read ahead of me. There is no particular point. We are not in a competition here. The learner doesn't know anything about the item. So the item here, we know it is perfect forms. The second stage is exposure. The learner hears or reads examples of the item maybe a number of times, but doesn't particularly notice it. We did that here. We read this form within a context. We are teachers. We are advanced. We have advanced knowledge in English, so we just looked at it for 30 seconds. But maybe we'll allow our learners to look at it more, allow them to read it a couple of times. So that is the first stage where we have this exposure to learning. And then the third is noticing. The learner begins to realize that there is a feature he doesn't fully understand, not always, or a feature that he needs to know more about. So let me add that to that statement. A learner realizes there's a feature he needs to know more about. Okay, so that is where this noticing happens. Okay, so that is what happened in the second stage, that there is something problematic about these sentences. They are untrue. That is why only the fibs statements, the untrue statements, have these features. So that is to draw their attention to that. Slight planning on the part of the teacher, where they notice that there is a feature in these sentences which are not there. And this is not a conscious process, let me tell you. So you don't have to tell them to notice anything at all. Teacher do not have to tell them to notice. This exposure, noticing are things that should happen automatically. And how you create that in the class depends on your ingenuity and your skill as a teacher. And the third stage is understanding, where the learner starts to look more closely at the item and tries to work out the formation rules and the meanings, possibly with the help of reference information, explanation, and other help. Here it's a bit conscious process where you encourage them to look at that particular item. So it's a vocabulary item, it's a pronunciation item, or like here, or a grammar item. We allow them to focus more on those particular places where the item that we want them to learn is hidden. So that is where the understanding happens. I'm just referring to these things in a very general way. We need to work differently with different grammatical items in different classes. Well, in the fifth stage, the learner tries to use the item in his own speech or writing. Yeah. Maybe hesitatingly or with errors. But in the fifth stage, how it should be done can be done by teachers in so many different ways, where you encourage the learner to go out beyond the context. Is there a problem?
No,
Okay.
sir, no, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So in the fifth stage, what we do is we travel further. For example, in this case, you can ask the students to create 4 sentences of their own, following the teacher's model about their own lives, which should have the same structure. Alternate sentences should contain the same construction and should contain a mistake or something like that, which will give them practice. And it is the sixth stage, which is something that happens outside the classroom, where the learner integrates the item fully into his or her language and uses it without being conscious about it. Yeah. But still there will be minor errors. That's a very important thing you should keep in mind. From the very beginning till the end, there is our movement is not always towards perfection. There will be errors in all stages, but our aim is to make that item useful for the person who is learning it. It should not remain in a domain separately, something that happens exclusively in the classroom. It should become the learner's own, so that he or she goes out and tries it out. So, well, I'm not giving any solutions. This is generally the progression of how a class will progress, and this is how we implement it depends on our individual ways of teaching. And I would also say this is the process through which we learn even outside the classroom. Well, on a broader scale, where we talk about the extensive reading and extensive listening, through reading books, through reading articles, through reading stories or listening to stories, listening to music, etc., the students are being exposed. And this noticing in this class, this is a class environment where we structured them, structured the lesson in such a way that there is a case of noticing. But in actual life, we are not conscious about it. as the student is exposed to the language naturally through reading and listening, this noticing happens automatically, provided you give the orientation in the
Sai Baba Ganwarpu, sir. Sir, I'm sorry that you have to present it again, sir, like slide again.
certainly, sir.
Sir, Sai Baba, sir, please stop presenting. Yeah. Participants, kindly do not present anything on the screen until the session gets over, please.
Okay, am I back?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir, you are.
Dear friends who have joined
Yes,
after we began, what we should do is please turn off your video, and mic is automatically turned off, I believe. And don't touch the screen. Don't touch your mouse. The mouse is dangerous. Keep it away and keep your hands like this or like this and sit and concentrate, because if you accidentally touch some button, the talk will be interrupted. All right. Thank you for that. And I was talking about natural acquisition of language. Students can do without teachers. In learning language, students can manage without teachers. But I'm not saying that we are redundant, but the learning becomes much more enriching. We give them this structured practice of doing this, not consciously. You're not going to tell them that, well, you're ignorant of this item and you're going to I'm going to expose you to it first and then you will notice. This is something the teacher keeps in the mind. This is entirely for the teacher to have in mind and structure the lesson plan accordingly, or the lesson accordingly. And we need to keep in mind that this is a process the student will also follow in real life when he or she tries to learn language through being exposed to wide reading and wide listening. So they get exposed to so many structures, and at times they notice some particular structure or particular idiom or particular spelling. And while if it's listening, they will notice a particular accent or a pronunciation aspect. Noticing happens. If you can give them in this training in the class, they will do it better in real life. And then this understanding of the meaning, etc., happens. And the practice and active use part outside there, which we hope will happen in their real life, if provided they have the context, they will also come back to the class and have it, give expression to it while we give them some tasks to do. Well, this is the general plan we should have when our focus is on language learning. And when we are teaching literature, we can also have this very same things in mind, so that we extract both literary aspects and linguistic aspects from the text we are dealing. All right. Here, I think the second aspect I'll talk about, the first aspect was on lesson planning. Second aspect is about teaching grammar, because we do a lot of grammar teaching. And the point of what grammar teaching is all about is a very troubling question. I would say, everything we do in the class is grammar related. So we need to remember that grammar is not just what is contained in a grammar book. Grammar is everything that we do in the class. Even pronouncing a sentence, giving the proper accent in a particular place is partly grammatical. So it's not just the structure. You say the right structure in the wrong way, you get your idea wrong. So that is this. So the grammar, I would mean in a very wide way, everything that helps your learner understand what you're saying, everything the learner need to communicate with his or her peers and out in the job environment, everything he needs related to language would be grammatical needs. But we use grammar in this restricted way, in the sense of how the words are arranged, the structure, the syntax of the sentences, the structural things, what we usually categorize under grammar. So we have these three aspects of grammar which we need to keep in mind. The form, which is the present perfect, for example, we discussed that. The form, the way in which the words appear to our eyes before the cognition happens. And there is a meaning, of course, certainly. What meaning we get is also a very important thing. But we generally neglect this aspect. Mostly in the traditional classes and even in today's classes, because we are inundated by so many other responsibilities and so many other work priorities, we often focus more on form and meaning. We say this is a form and this is what it means, is what we also do. We assume that the learner acquires the use or function. The learner learns how to use it in context and learns the function of it later on their own. That is our assumption. We do this form and meaning in the class and assume that this big chunk happens in the lives of the students, which need not always happen. So then how do we structure our class, grammar class? This POP is a fond word I'm using to refer to my father, who passed away last November. He was a teacher. He lived a rich life as a teacher, and he would share with me this experience of teaching grammar when he was primarily an economics teacher. But when he was a young person, he used to teach some people in the neighborhood how to use English because he had an interest in English. So I'm sharing his grammar adventure with you. Well, look at this. What he did was, this was long back, even before I was born. Yeah. So he, is everything okay? Hello? Okay. So, is there a problem? Okay, it looks okay. Anyway, thank you. So I'm coming back to my father's grammar class. So he would share this experience of presenting the form noun plus is plus verb plus ing. This is a present continuous form, and he would first say this is how so what he would do is he will say, I'm going to teach you the present continuous form today. Students, dear students, today we are doing the present continuous form in English. And then he would give examples. My sister is singing, Gopal's son is walking, and so many examples he would give. And he would give people exercise after that. And one exercise he gave was Rama's wife is dash. And he wanted the students to complete that sentence with a suitable verb. And this is the answer one very ingenious lady wrote. Rama's wife is...
Sir?
Yes?
Sir, your presentation is not visible, sir. Your BPT is not visible, sir.
Brilliant. I will come back and do that. Wait a minute.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
It's okay. I hope I have come back.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. We have very dynamic listeners. They sometimes present on their own. Anyway, so I was saying that my father was teaching English long back, and he gave the students this form, noun is plus verb plus ing, and then he would give examples. And then when he gave this exercise, asked them to say what Rama's wife is dash. He expected them to say Rama's wife is walking, Rama's wife is singing, Rama's wife is cooking, etc. But the answer one of the students wrote was, Rama's wife is seething. So she knew Rama's wife was Sita, and because after his ing should come, so noun plus is plus verb plus ing. So she created this little nice verb and put an ing after that. Well, that was the result of this model of teaching. Well, of course, this method of teaching worked with so many people, but there were occasions when it failed, and this is an occasion when it did not work, a proverbial occasion. So what he was trying to do is, he presented the form first, and he gave some practice to the students, and he hoped that the students will use it in the class. This is what traditionally we have been doing. We would present the form, we would give them practice in the class, and then we'll assume that it has become theirs, that they will use it, which very often did not happen. This still continues to be a problem in our classes. When we present, we give them practice, but we assume that this use part, using that construction or that particular language feature in real life, we hope will happen on its own sometime later. But very often it doesn't happen. Now imagine you are teaching a grammar item, and your thought should be, after the students leave the class, will they be able to recognize it when they meet it, means the grammar item, while listening or reading? Will they be able to form the item in isolation, including stress, intonation, etc.? Will they be able to use it to express some meanings? In short, has that grammar item become their own? This is a question we need to ask ourselves when we plan a language class, and particularly a grammar class. So this is the old model, which ended in Rama's wife is seething, which is the presentation, practice, and the assumed use. And this is a different model where we, what we did before, you read the passage first, you used your linguistic knowledge first, and then you had a practice of it. When this, or rather you did not have, but the student later on did a practice where they wrote their own sentences. And later at the end, in another day, if you want, the teacher can tell them what we did in the last class was to learn the present perfect form. So this is just the opposite of the old model. The problem is when you tell them you are going to do the present perfect tense in the very beginning of the class, my experience is, and the experience of most teachers will be, that students will be slightly frightened by these terms. And even very intelligent students who are capable of designing a rocket will complain that English is difficult. It's proverbially so, primarily because we have always told them these difficult terminology. Terms like present perfect continuous, etc., are meant for teachers to keep in their minds and encourage the learners to make it their own. The learner should be able to use a present perfect construction, but he need not necessarily know it is a present perfect construction. Only those students who later on plan to become English teachers on their own need to have that knowledge. But sometimes the expressions like present or past or tense, etc., will be very useful in the class, but that can happen a little later in our class. So this is something we need to deal in great detail, but just briefly I am touching on that aspect. And third thing we discussed today would be the use of language one in the class. So how much mother tongue would we use in the class? How much Tamil can be used, or how much Hindi can be used, or Malayalam, Kannada can be used in the class when we are teaching English to the students? There can be two extremes. There can be too much of mother language one and too little of language one. So what happens when there is too much of mother tongue? I've written here that human nature is not to do anything that is not necessary. None of us would do anything, use our brain or use our muscles, unless we have full conviction why we should do that. So you read an English sentence to the students, and then you explain the whole thing in your mother tongue. What happens is the students will listen. Most of the students will listen only to the translated part. Their brain will switch. It will go into a hibernation mode when you're reading the English, and they will become alert when you read the mother tongue part. That is because we are structured like that. We won't do anything unless there is a need for it. So, but this is not about all the students in the class, but a good number of students in the class. This is a challenge that we always have. So the question is, how much can we use mother tongue in the class? Very serious question. There need to be a balance. That's the idea. Not too much of language one and not too little of language one. If you totally take language one out of the class also, we can have a problem. Let's look at this. Language one use, mother tongue use is to be judiciously done. We generally tolerate language one use. So when the teacher is teaching, and the teacher's idea is that, the teacher has decided not to use mother tongue in the class, or minimally use mother tongue in the class, and the teacher is using only English consistently. But then she or he finds a lot of students using mother tongue. We will generally tolerate that. We won't impose English on them at that stage. But yeah, even the teacher can use the mother tongue when it is needed, because another important thing is we are working with, as I said, brains which has a strong emotional part. Human beings are very emotive, and very often we assume that they are only highly rational creatures. That's not so. Our learners come into a class with many
So sorry for the interruption. Please
yes.
stop presenting on the
Yeah,
screen. Please
I'll do that.
stop.
I'll do that. It has become a way of life. Okay now?
Yes, sir. So participants, please do not present anything on the screen. Maheshwaran, sir, please stop presenting again.
It has happened again?
Yes, sir. Now it is clear. I think everybody can see your PPT.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So friends who joined us
Thank you, sir.
later, please turn off your videos, turn off your mics, and don't touch your mouse on. You don't. It has gone again?
No, sir. Now it is very clear.
Sir, no, it is not visible, sir. Sir, it is not visible, sir.
Okay. Dear, please don't. Yeah. Dear participants,
Clear now, sir.
please don't touch your mouse. Just watch, look at the screen silently, and bear with me till I finish.
Dawood, sir.
Can you centrally switch off the mic, please?
Yes, sir.
Am I visible now?
Just 1 minute, sir. 1 minute. Yes. Kapagodi, ma'am, now is it visible?
Yeah, fine.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's very nice. This is a way in which we express that we are here, which is a nice thing. So that the whole thing won't become too mechanical. Anyway, let's go back to what I was saying.
Maheshwaran, sir, please mute your mic.
Thank you. So I was saying that even the teacher can resort to language one, mother tongue, because as I was saying, our students are have a strong emotional aspect to them, and sometimes using a little bit of mother tongue in the class will work magic. They will feel motivated, or they'll feel more connection with the teacher. This is something I have felt very often, even while doing PG classes. When we continuously go on in English, there is a disconnect between the teacher and the students at times, which needs to be resolved. Anyway, so but even though we tolerate mother tongue in the class, in every class we can have maybe 5 or 10 minutes a program, some activity we do. Participants, can you please turn off your mic? Hello. Mr. Balaji, can you please stop presenting? Yes. I think now I am visible again.
I think now we can see your presentation, sir. There is no interruption.
Please try to mute all the participants.
Yes, sir. I'm doing it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel at home because I can hear a baby crying. Nice, second. I'm not crying.
1
talking.
minute, sir.
Okay. Yes. Shall I go on?
Yes, sir.
A nice friend has come on screen now.
I'll try to remove, sir. I'll try to remove. I'm just,
It's okay.
it's difficult to find out because there are 200 participants, so it is very difficult to find out.
I know. Shall I
Yes, sir.
resume my
Please, sir.
presentation? Yes. Okay. Yes. So we'll go to the next aspect, which is related to correcting errors. Well, a major issue that we have in the class. A couple of points we need to remember is errors are not always bad. We have a strong animosity towards errors, and we also do not like if our errors are corrected. So we must remember that two things. One is errors are not always bad. They are positive signs of growth. It shows that the person is trying to learn. A child who's very small will try to stand up and walk, and then it will inevitably fall. Nobody just jumps up, springs up one fine morning and walks straight out of the room. You fall, you crawl, you are in all kinds of miserable states before you actually start walking firmly on the ground. In the same way, when we learn language, we do make an immense lot of errors, which is a positive sign that you are doing it. A child that is lying down all the time, it's not positive. Many parents have this worry. They say, why is my child always falling down? It's falling down because it's a normal, healthy baby. In the same way, our students make mistakes because they are normal, healthy individuals and because they are trying to learn. So one point is that errors are not always bad. Of course, making errors persistently is certainly problematic. I'm not talking about that. Having difficulties in your language is an inevitable process of language development. It's applicable to us too. And all errors need not be corrected all the time. That's another aspect. We have another, as teachers, we feel that the students should come up only with the correct sentences. If they make a mistake, you are terribly alarmed. You don't have to be alarmed. Let them make mistakes. All errors need not be corrected all the time. If you do an activity in the class and the student speaks and he makes a mistake and he tries to correct, you try to correct him, it'll impede his fluency. It'll inhibit him. He won't feel like speaking spontaneously the next time. So all errors need not be corrected all the time. Because correction should not be at the cost of fluency and self-esteem. Two important things. A student tries to speak and he speaks in a clumsy language. You just allow him to speak, and you just have this culture in the class where the others also learn to respect this learning process, where you make mistakes in all aspects, in pronunciation, in spelling, etc. And you don't correct all the time. And correcting is a major thing. When you correct, when you scold, when you give impositions, etc., you are challenging the self-esteem of the learner. I'm not talking about persistent arbitrary mistakes. I'm talking about natural errors that happen in the class, which we frown upon generally. Correction should not be at the cost of fluency, and it should not impede the self-esteem of the learner. And the teacher can effect correction in the class without personalizing. So when a person is talking, you keep quiet, and you note that error, and you later, through a little activity or through in a statement that, well, let me look at this particular aspect. I've often heard people do it this way, etc. Without pinpointing the person, you can make these corrections. What I meant by personal correction is, if there is a student in the class who persistently make a mistake, you can talk to him or her personally and discuss the issue with him. That is also a possibility of that. Then he won't feel challenged. When you correct before the peers, very often they feel humiliated. Well, and at the end of every class, you can have a discussion of the most persistent errors. That's a way of correcting mistakes. So very often we feel that, oh, there's this ocean of errors in the class, and what am I going to do about it? You cannot do anything about it. It's not the teacher's business to correct all the mistakes that the students are ever going to make. You may be able to support them with a few. So at the end of your well-planned class, spare 10 minutes, perhaps if possible, to discuss one or two issues that you notice. It can be related to pronunciation. It can be related to grammar. Discuss one or two issues and give them some work based on that. That's the way you move slowly from fluency to accuracy. Another aspect, we are coming towards the final part. Learning styles and learner differences is one thing we need to keep in mind. As I said, our classrooms are very dynamic. They keep changing because we have autonomous learners. And when we move towards autonomy of learners, we need to consider learning styles and learner differences very seriously. Each student has can have a different learning style from the teacher style and from the style of the others. It's the learning style and is closely related to the personality of the learners. Each learner is unique, and each learner is different in the way he or she perceives and constructs the world. We have a different way in which we understand the world, and in the same way we have a different way in which we learn also. I learn about the world by seeing, and I am a visual learner. I am more able to listen to the sounds of my surroundings and understand. I am more my auditory system is stronger. You have different ways in which you learn, and your learners also will be different in that way, and you need to structure your class accordingly. So depending on the individual styles of understanding, we need to structure our class. Teaching strategies should be framed to suit this variety among the learning styles. Well, this is again another topic. What I'm doing today is kind of discuss different or those aspects which I thought are very important when you start your classes afresh. And here is a little checklist for teachers who are planning to do a language class. There are different kinds of intelligences, as we often have heard, and this is a checklist. When you plan a lesson, whether it's a written plan or a plan that you have in your mind, see that you have addressed linguistically intelligent students by including reading, speaking, writing, spelling activities and games in your class. Games do not mean students running about all the time. It can be a 5-minute puzzle solving or a jigsaw or a crossword doing or something like that. It is optional. You don't have to have games in the class. You can, it's good, but you need not always have it. Just like students are of different nature, we are also of different nature. Every teacher cannot be a performer. Every teacher cannot be dynamic, springing around and all that. So according to but we can always move to away from our pattern and change a bit. But at the same time, sometimes you may not have the skill to conduct a game in the class. Don't do it. It's not necessary. If you can, certainly have games in the class. And many of our learners are highly logical in their learning. They like things to be to have a pattern, to be in the form of tables, in well-structured formula-like form, etc. So you need to keep them in mind. Have you included grammar practice, problem-solving tasks, logic puzzles, calculations, critical thinking activities? Don't worry about these things, but I just want to draw your attention towards that. And there are very visual learners who would include, who would like colors, who would like graphics, images. So you need to include visuals, colors, pictures, etc. for them. And bodily kinesthetic, as I was saying, some teachers are very bodily kinesthetic. They can dance and they can move around the class dynamically, but everybody cannot do that. And so just as there are different kind of learners, there are different kind of teachers. But we can learn a bit from our colleagues. Very often you feel that a particular colleague is doing things differently. Don't worry about it. That is, he or she has a special kind of intelligence, and yours is different. You have your own strengths, but at the same time, you can pick some cues from the other persons and try to do that a bit. Develop your skill in doing something else. Bodily kinesthetic learners who like to have action in the class. So role plays and stuff like that will help them a lot. Role plays and group activity should become part of our class, which I think already has become anyway. I leave this musical part. These two are very important, intrapersonal and interpersonal things. Some students are highly introverted and they work best when they are alone. So give them, see that you have some work for them, private learning time, self-relaxation, learning diaries. There will be a handful of students who are highly introverted in the class, who always tend to suffer in the class because you feel that they are too arrogant or too proud. But actually, that need not be the case. It's just that the person is a bit shy deep within, very lonely kind of individual who has great potential in him or her, who would need special attention. You don't mock them in the class, but give special care to them, additional duties, etc. And there are many with high interpersonal skill who can, interact with others, who are not at all shy, who are very communicative, etc. So you need to keep them also in mind. So your class will have all these kinds of things, and your lesson plan need to have all these things in mind too. Well, I think that is pretty much that I have to discuss with you. Before I conclude and request questions, I conclude saying it's important to bear in mind that there are many different ways of learning, and there are many different ways of teaching, and that many would resist any attempt to change their preferred learning style. Students wouldn't want to change their learning style. A style that they have formed in school, they may live it through their life. So you need to respect that. And we also have the same problem. We may have a learning style which we may try to impose on our students, which again is a very dangerous thing, because your student is not you. And we need to keep that in mind very much. The whole area of learner difference is rather complex and can be quite perplexing even to experienced learners. So this is only a tip of the iceberg. The problems that teachers confront every day in the classroom is of a wide range, and it's very complex, including the aspects related to learner difference. We need to be well informed about the strengths and limitations of the models we are using and adapt them judiciously. Models of lessons in the class. When you plan your lesson, keep all these things in mind. We too constantly learn. At no point will a teacher be able to say, I have learned everything, now I can easily do a lesson. That will never come. Even however old you get, the students are also changing, the times are changing, and you need to shift your ways accordingly. So that is pretty much all that I have in mind. And because the time is also a little ahead than we planned, I would like to thank you for your kind attention. And sorry we couldn't interact more, but perhaps now we'll have a few questions. Thank you.
Now it's Q&A session. Please one by one mute your mic and ask your queries and questions.
Sir, we would like to have the last slide that you are showing. Please, sir.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
I will do that. I'll do that. Which I missed.
The last slide that is
this one?
picture there. Yes.
This?
Yes. The last one. Yes.
Okay.
After that you show one.
Oh, this one, which I did not talk about.
Yes.
You like me to
I want you to.
Oh, great. I thought I was trying to save the time. Well, happy to do it. Well, this is the whole process. Here you have input, which is what we give the learners in the class, and also what we expect the learners to do outside the classroom through extensive reading and listening. And learning is something that we assume will happen in between, through understanding, through memorizing, reflection, noticing, etc. And finally, you have the use part. This is the largely what shall we say, the part that we don't give much attention to. We need to focus on this a lot, because unless we do that, our input and this central part will have little impact. That is basically what this image is trying to tell you. So what we do in the class is two kinds of exposure. One is restricted exposure. Just like I gave a passage in the beginning, that is restricted exposure. It can be for reading or listening. And this authentic exposure is what the students actually read outside the classroom, which is, we can also do that. You're giving them newspaper articles to read, would be authentic exposure. The language that they will encounter in real life is authentic exposure. Restricted exposure is the language models that we create for them in the form of a textbook or the teacher-developed content. And there is also other data, postbook information, teacher explanations, doubts that we get cleared, reference books, etc. And all these things help in noticing. If noticing doesn't happen, the language learning process will not be very rewarding. Very often we have a problem with this, because we are worried more about structuring our lesson. We are worried about the input aspect. Sometimes we are not sure whether the students do this noticing. Only if they notice will they be able to use it. And this is about output. We expect them to notice and then to use what I was repeatedly talking about, the U aspect, which is using, where the students use. And using also can have a restricted mode and an authentic mode. In the restricted mode is what we do in the classroom, where you ask a person to stand up and speak or to discuss in group or to submit a written assignment is the restricted output, where they will use a limited number of vocabulary items. They don't have much choice in doing it. In the authentic output, they have a lot of choice to experiment and to use a wider range of skills that they have learned. So this is actually a summing up of what I have put in the presentation throughout. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm
Good
Dr.
afternoon.
from Tyagaraja
Thank you,
College.
sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation, sir. And I thank the MGR University for having given us a chance to listen to you, sir. My question here is, how do we apply Bloom's taxonomy, that is all the 6 levels, while teaching grammar to our students?
Can you please repeat, sir?
How can we apply Bloom's taxonomy, that is all the 6 levels,
yes,
while teaching grammar to our students, sir?
Well, I would say that Bloom's taxonomy and all the theoretical things are part of what is called teacher's grammar. Those are techniques, information that we conceive. This is one point I was also saying. We are so much worried about the theory that we learn that we are finding it difficult to actually help out our learners. There is nothing wrong even in unlearning a bit. Bloom's taxonomy gives you the information of how cognition works, how the learning happens in an intellectual plane, which is excellent for a teacher to know it. But in the actual class, through the practical things I was just saying, what you do is you are working out Bloom's taxonomy, you're working out all the theoretical information we have, constructivism, everything about how learning can be done in a learner-centered manner, without making the learner too much conscious about this learning process.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions?
Good afternoon, sir. This is Karthini from Dr. N.K. University.
Hello, Karthini.
So we have, in a class, we have different levels of students.
Yes.
And how do we handle them? Like we have slow learners and we have a different level of learners in the class. So how do we tackle that when we have a huge number of 60 in a class? How do we focus on slow learners?
Well, that is a $1 million question you're asking. How to manage large and multi-level classes. There are books on that, but none of these books have come up with any solid solution to how to manage a large and multi-level classroom. But in fact, that was my focus too. Even in a large classroom with multi-level learners, a couple of tips would be, if you manage to get them motivated enough, there will always be a few more students who are very difficult to motivate. We can put them in groups and get them to work. Even in a large class of 60 to 20, you can have group and pair activities, one thing, where they get closer experience with language, one-to-one talking. Another thing is that if they're I have tried this with limited success, where we bring about a mentoring system where we club weak students with students who are better in their English. But the problem is the students with better English need not have the maturity to treat the students with limited knowledge. So what you need to do is put responsible students in charge of the weaker students, and that might work. It all depends on the time you devote on planning your class and working on your class. It's all up to the teacher to find out where exactly this kind of intervention is needed. Anyway, I'm not trying to give a big explanation to your question, because your question is a very big, has raised a big issue which needs to be discussed a lot. And I have, for the last 10, 15 years, I have tried to write about it, read about it. And I found that pretty much of the books on it have been written by people from abroad. There are books written by people from England. And to them, large classroom is only a classroom with about 20 students. So their small classroom is a class with 5 or 6 students. To us, that is different. We are like, compared to their notion, it is like having a convention in the class, 100 students. But that is our reality, and that is a reality which is not going to go away. However, we clamor for smaller number of classrooms, it's not going to happen. So it's up to us to develop strategies to manage large classes and also multi-level classes where we can have all kinds of levels. In your lesson plan, you should have a little bit for all these different learners. That is what I was trying to say in that learner difference part also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
Sir, this is Shuganti from Madras University.
Hello.
My question is, how can we improve the language skill of government school children, especially in rural areas, sir?
If all the students are equally low in their grades, the problem you are talking is you have a syllabus meant for a higher level of learners, and you have a set of students who are not even very sure of their letters of alphabet. That's a very common problem we have. So what we need in the government school, one advantage is that they don't worry much about the performance in the final exam. So
yes.
Is there anything to say?
Yeah, of course, sir.
Yeah. So one big blessing, that's actually a blessing. What you can do is don't try to, suppose the learner's level is somewhere in level 4 in a band of 10, and your lesson is supposed to be for band 6 level people, and your students are only level 4. That is a perpetual problem we have. I would say you bring it down to their level and do it only in that level. Those aspects which are cognitively challenging for them, you can leave out. You can leave out because you're not doing any disservice. The syllabus you have is a standard kind of thing. It's created keeping in mind the average situation. But very often we are put in at a very lower level circumstance where this will not work. So where the teacher has the freedom to adapt it to their level, at least you will be able to do something. Suppose you are trying to implement the higher level to them, they will just learn it by heart and no language learning will actually happen.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Sir, that differentiated learning can work with this kind of students, sir?
Certainly, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Learning.
Yes, yes. That is,
reducing or diluting supposing the higher proficiency students are doing 10 exercises, these students can be given 5 like that. Can it be useful for us?
Sure, ma'am. In a class of multi-level learners, we can do that. But the former lady was talking about the whole class being much below the level of the syllabus that we need to transact.
Okay.
Yes. Well, all these things are areas where we should do further research on.
Yes, sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. I am Shaktivel from Coimbatore.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Sir, good afternoon, sir. This is Shaktivel.
Yes, sir. Yes, tell me.
Sir, I have a question that the students are those who are really good at speaking skills, but it is also very clear that they don't have much efficiency in writing skills.
Yes.
It is very clearly evident nowadays because they are really good at speaking and they assume themselves that they are really good at possessing all the 4 skills equally, LS or W.
Yes.
But it is clearly evident that their writing skills are not good at. But when we try to give much attention on improving the writing skills, they don't show much interest on developing their writing skills because, as stated, their spoken skills are very much enough in taking the placements.
Oh.
Then how shall we rectify this problem and how shall the writing skills particularly be improved?
Yes. Well, this is actually the opposite of the common scenario where people are reasonably good at writing, but they have problem with speaking. So in a way, it is a good thing that they speak better because speech is a primary and difficult thing to attain. So I don't have a solution for that. Perhaps you could make it more attractive for them to do more reading and also writing, get them to read interesting stories perhaps, and to give them more engaging writing tasks, which is close to their situation. But it is not easy. Unless it is part of the curriculum, students generally won't do it. So that is a regional solution you'll need to find for them. So as I was always saying, the students will never do anything. We will not do either when we don't really have a purpose to do that. So we should decide that that's a purpose, and I have to do this. So if you'll probably need to create that in your case, make writing mandatory or something like that. Anyway, I'm not happy.
So that we can.
Hello, tell me.
Sir, in that case, that we can just create such a lab component mark so that it will become a mandate for them to present their writing skills.
Certainly.
Will it be
yeah.
working out, sir?
Yeah, and ensure that they do not copy it.
Yes.
Plagiarism.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Sure,
So
sir,
what we
Thank
can
you,
do
sir.
is
Thank you so much.
Shaktivel, sir, 1 second. One thing
Sir,
is
yes, sir,
when you give them big assignments like writing several pages, the possibility of their just copying it is very high. So if you can give them shorter chunks, larger number in shorter chunks, that might work better with your learners.
Sure, sir. Definitely, sir. We will
Smaller,
work it out.
attainable tasks. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Dr. Rachna Yadav from DTU Delhi.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, sir, this question is there in my mind since long, and I guess you get the answer from this. I could get the answer from you. That I used to take personality development and soft skill with a student, but the problem with the professional, especially the professional student, is that if we are going to we provide them a space, a room, okay, fine, you guys are free to ask anything, so they take it for granted, okay, now the teacher is in our hand, so we should be strict with them, or we should be like that, softer with them.
Well,
They start crossing the boundaries.
I understand. See, in learner autonomy, even with our children at home, there was a time when they were not treated like human beings at all. Children were treated like lower class individuals. They did not have any voice. The child did not have the courage to ask the father anything directly, and such things were there. But now things have changed, and children have absolute freedom, and they can talk to the father directly, etc. It's the same in the class. There should be freedom, but the freedom should be a controlled kind of freedom. It's not anarchy in the class. It's a controlled kind of freedom where the control is still with the teacher. Otherwise, the teacher is not needed. One major role of the teacher is certainly to control the class, scold them if necessary, take them to task, give them punishments, everything. I was saying not to punish them when they make a mistake in the class while doing an activity. Other behavioral issues you need to correct. But always we need to keep in mind that we should not hurt their that emotive aspect. That is one thing we need to keep in mind. That is why teaching is a very challenging profession, and teaching language becomes even more challenging. As David Crystal, the eminent linguist, was saying, neurosurgery is easy related to the job that we teachers are doing.
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. But in the professionalism, definitely we have to face these kind of problems.
Yes, this is an everyday problem. So you need to have autonomy.
Hello, sir.
And 1 second, sir. Can I complete?
Sir, till the person finishes.
Yes. So we need to have autonomy, but at the same time, we should see that the discipline is not lost. The control has to be there. And young people are very tricky. They will, if they find you're very liberal, they will try to exploit you. That is in their blood.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
So,
hello, sir.
Yes, hello.
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 Sir, I'm Dr. D.B. Rathod from Gujarat Technological University.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah. So I have a question that. Yeah.
Please.
Hello.
Yes, sir. I can
generally,
see you.
Student mix up, informal and. Yeah, a little bit disturbance is there, sir.
But you can go ahead. You're very clear. You're very clear, sir. Just talk.
Yeah, actually, sir, student is mixing up formal and informal languages when they write. So what is the solution of it? Generally, they speak, they write as they speak.
Yes, yes. I would say it is a good thing that they write at all. If they mix informal expressions, it shows that they are trying to use the language they have learned. Let them write, encourage them to write more, and gently give them correction. But in the written thing, you can always correct. That's the beauty of it, without hurting. You don't use a red pen, but with a red pen can say that you are incriminating them. But with another color, you can underline and you can give comments. You need not correct all the things. The important thing is to encourage them to do it more. And these things tend to be corrected on their own without us worrying about it. So long as they keep trying, that's the biggest thing.
Okay, but sir, exam like IELTS, TOEFL, and all these things, it won't work in that way.
Yes.
So,
well, I would like to say one thing in this regard, sir. In the class, in a class, we have when you take in terms of percentage, there will be about 10% who want to have very excellent command over language to do the IELTS or TOEFL, etc. And they unless they are highly motivated, they will not be able to do that. It's not our duty to prove, to kind of groom them to do an IELTS exam, because to us, the majority of the learners with basic level issues are more important. So if you worry much about it, we'll be losing on the fluency aspect. Well, another thing is, in the class, it's very important to encourage fluency, both in writing and reading. Let them do as much as they can. The quantum is important, but ultimately our move has to be towards attaining accuracy. As you said, the right kind of register that they use to clear a test in English, etc. But well, it depends on us how we manage, how we keep the balance between giving them enough input in the class and encouraging them to write more, etc. It's again a tricky thing, but I think we need not worry as long as the students are willing to do more reading and writing. Hello?
Any more questions? Okay, one last question before we wind up.
Yes.
Sir, can we wind up, sir?
Oh, we can, yes, certainly.
Or we can wait for one more question.
I'm okay for either.
Okay, participants, if you have one more question, you
ask Tangam ma'am to be ready.
Yes, ma'am, she is in the line. I've already seen. I think she's ready, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, sir, and you have taught us to improve our teaching skills.
Thank you.
Okay. I call Ms. Thangam ma'am to give vote of thanks for the session.
Yes.
Thangam ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Can I proceed, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, one and all present here. I, on behalf of Dr. MGR Educational and Research Institute University, Department of English, would like to thank our eminent speaker, Dr. C.A. Lal, Professor of English, University of Kerala, for his provocative session. Thank you, sir. I thank our Joint Registrar for his constant support. I thank our head of the department and all faculties for organizing this national E-level FDP. Thank you all. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to all participants present today. Thank you, everybody. Once again, thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. That was an informative session. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the informative session,
Thank
sir.
you.
Sir, it was
Thank you, sir.
a wonderful and thought-provoking session, sir.
thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, sir. There are a lot of messages in the chat for you with all the. They are saying that it is informative and good session. We need the people, sir. A lot of messages, sir.
Lot of messages,
Yes,
yes.
sir, for you, sir.
I'm trying to read them.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
ma'am.
Thank you very much for your informative session, sir. Wonderful session,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shall we-
Participants, you can come back next session by 2 o'clock. You can join in by 1:50 at 1:50 for subaltern literature session. And yeah, you can wind up.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I am leaving now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Thank you, ma'am. Can we wind up, ma'am? We'll
Yes.
meet at 1:50, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Not 1:50.
Yeah,
At
1:50, ma'am.
1:50. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Participants,
yeah.
kindly
Sure,
join
sure.
by 1:50.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
1:50. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, participants, sorry that we couldn't mute somebody, and there were some disturbances, and we think we would sort it out in the second session. And
Soundara, thank you very much, Soundara.
Okay, ma'am.
And thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Dr. Soundarajan, sir.
sir, ma'am.
Soundarajan, sir.
Sure. Okay.
Indra ma'am, shall we wind up now? Ma'am, Sena ma'am, Indra ma'am.
Ma'am, you know the PPT.
Ma'am, session is over, right? Hello, Indra ma'am.